Contempt of Congress? What a hefty oxymoron. So for those of you who are familiar or who are not familiar, Steve Bannon, former Trump advisor and host of his own podcast and show The War Room, quite a prominent figure on the MAGA right, he was charged with contempt of Congress quite recently and sentenced to 6 months in jail and quite a hefty fine for his disobedience to Congress. Now, I'll get to that in a second, because I find that detail of this entire thing to be the most absurd claim that a institution constituted on the consent of the government can make. But I'll get to that in a second. Now, for those of you who do not know about the story, here's some background. The House of Representatives was trying to investigate January 6th, and so they were summoning witnesses, and Congress has the ability to issue subpoenas. And so Steve Bannon was given a subpoena, and he did not want to go and testify before the committee. And so, as Congress can do, they recommended charges, the charge of contempt of Congress, to the DOJ, and the DOJ, working hand in hand with the legislative branch, decided to pull Bannon before a grand jury, charge him, and get an indictment. And now it's been decided that he needs to go to jail for his irreverence towards Congress. So a lot of people have responded to this by saying that they have contempt for Congress. And that point actually touches on an even better point that I think is at the crux of this entire issue. For those of you who are not familiar with my videos, what I like to do, I like to analyze underlying principles. I like to see, why are certain things happening? What is the fundamental cause? And what are the causes of that fundamental cause? And when we look at this charge, at contempt of Congress, we have to really ask ourselves, does it make sense within the context of the American experiment? My claim is that it does not make sense. My friends, the charge contempt of Congress has no basis within the ethos of the American experiment. America was founded on this idea of the consent of the governed, and that is that the governed, not the government, but the governed, establish government to protect their inalienable rights, and that they can also dissolve, amend, or alter the government if the government encroaches upon its initial duties. Now, this principle is not just a nicety that people say to make themselves feel good. It is the foundation of a constitutional republic. So, there are 3 branches of government which are all constituted on the consent of the government: the executive, legislative, and judiciary. Congress is simply a functionary of the people. In fact, Congress is the branch of government through which the people's will can be most directly expressed. The president and the judiciary are more removed from the will of the governed, the minority, as opposed to Congress, whereas Congress has to face the will of the minority every 2 years or every 6 years or however long, depending on the branch of government that body of Congress is. With the Senate, it's 6 years. For the House, it's 2 years, every 2 years. And so Congress is simply a functionary of the people. It is an agent of the people that is supposed to act on the desires of the people's will within the framework of the Constitution. Therefore, contempt for Congress is not only permissible, it is necessary. If an agent, a functionary, a servant does not understand when they have encroached upon a line they're not supposed to cross, and when they have violated their duty, how can they do their job well? How can they conform their actions to the proper mode of conduct that they need to do their job well? Congress, as an agent of the people and as a protector of the Constitution, needs to understand when it has encroached upon the Constitution, when it has encroached upon natural rights of its citizenry, and when it needs to be reined in. So contempt is necessary. But this idea of contempt of Congress now puts Congress as the governor and ruler of the people, not their agent and functionary. This is a defiance, in stark defiance, of the foundations of the United States. This is in stark defiance to the moral order of the Constitution. This is in stark defiance to what good government is. This is in stark defiance to our very core character as a nation. This is not just about Steve Bannon. This is about Congress making itself overlord and ruler of those it is meant to serve. When Congress can work hand in hand with the executive branch to bring forth criminal charges against someone who is in contempt of them, and we've already established that contempt has moral justification in the context of the American experiment. When Congress can do that, that means that they are, in essence, giving themselves more power that does not belong to them. And that also means that the system of government, which does have a basis in the American experiment, checks and balances, is not being adhered to. What do you mean, Christian? Well, very simple. Imagine the United States government as a balancing scale of weights. And in a proper balancing scale of weights, there is one side that's weighted, the other side that's weighted, and both of them are supposed to balance each other out. If one side is on the ground and the other side is up, that side has too much power, and same thing vice versa. Well, the idea of checks and balances is that the co-equal branches of government are meant to correct the other when the other transgresses upon their proper limits. Now, tell me this. How do you have co-equal branches of government when the legislative and the executive begin conspiring against people they happen not to like? How do you have a weight in which both sides are equally balanced? You don't. What you actually have, you have a weight in which both sides have an unequal amount of power, and the structure that they're meant to support, therefore, crumbles. It is not the proper structure. Congress has the ability to enforce its desires with the power that is bestowed in it by the Constitution. Congress, if they really want to bring someone to their committee, because Congress doesn't have oversight in the Constitution, they can defund an entire agency. They can make every other branch of government's life hell if they so choose. Congress does not need to have the power to recommend criminal charges for people who happen to defy them. Remember, Congress is not something to be respected and revered. Congress is a functionary of you and I as American citizens, and therefore there is no moral basis, no constitutional basis for Congress to go to a different branch of government and then conspire with them to punish people who decide to hold them in contempt or decide not to listen to them. We don't have to listen to Congress. They listen to us. They listen to the voters. In a constitutional republic, Congress is an extension of the desire of the voters and also the broader framework upon which Congress is established. And they have abilities to make every other branch of government respect that fact. But instead, Congress decides to give itself more power by collaborating with the DOJ to bring forth political prosecutions. This is a problem, my friends. Congress is not an impartial arbiter of its own affairs. The entire premise behind prosecutorial offices is that they're supposed to look at the facts of a case and decide with the assent of a grand jury whether to bring charges or not to bring charges, whether to get an indictment or not get an indictment. But Congress, being the judge and jury in its own process of bringing forth charges, also violates its proper role and condition. Now, many people may say, well, Christian, how is congressional oversight enforced if Congress cannot recommend criminal charges? Well, I just said to you guys that it's enforced by Congress actually using the powers that are within its ability. If the FBI director receives a request from Congress to come speak to them and he refuses, who analyzes the budget of the FBI director? Congress. Do you guys understand how there's no need for this unnecessary power to be granted to Congress for it to actually fulfill its constitutional functions. But here's the problem. This is not about Congress fulfilling its constitutional functions. This is about the overgrowth of the administrative state and those in Congress who willingly embolden it and enable it and then use it for their own desires. The January 6th committee is a political committee, and all of the investigations that have happened surrounding January 6th have decided to blow the entire event out of the water. Very rarely is the narrative about January 6th actually presented in a light that respects all the various nuances of the situation. No one wants to talk about the majority of people who were outside of the Capitol protesting peacefully. No one wants to talk about the fact that the Proud Boys are not white supremacists when in fact they are filled with people who are black, white, Hispanic, and their leader, Enrique, was also Hispanic. No one wants to talk about any of these things. They only want to focus on the few stray cases out of the hundreds that have been put before us. The few stray cases in which people were committing vandalism and they were making threats and they were doing things that are obscene and improper to the preservation of a civilized society. Those situations should and are being dealt with. But if Bannon or anyone else decides not to comply with a body meant to represent them, that is within their full authority as an American citizen. And it is against Congress's authority, it is against Congress's legitimacy to go against that desire. Once again, my friends, Congress represents us. We do not bow to it. For that reason, this contempt of Congress charge shouldn't even be a thing. It's unstable. It is not well with our constitutional system. It is not well with the moral philosophy that underpins America. It is not well with the principle of the consent of the government. It is not well. It is an aberration. And while we're at it, we can also get rid of the administrative state. We can also clean out the DOJ. We can also abolish the FBI. We can do a lot of things that will help and restore the moral and constitutional integrity of the American experiment. But one little step that all of us can take is calling for terms and charges like contempt of Congress to be ridiculed and not taken seriously because they have no solid basis in America. All right, my friends, if you guys like this video, please be sure to like, comment, subscribe, share. If you guys want to support me financially, there's a bunch of links down in the description down below in the comment section. You can also buy merch. We have merch now. You can guys see the merch right here. I have a coffee mugs, I've got shirts, I've got all kinds of things. If you guys also want to just donate, I have PayPal. I know PayPal is not very popular right now. I've got Patreon, I've got Buy Me a Coffee. I've got Locals, christianwatson.locals.com, which is I'm starting to build that out. I'm going to be releasing a study guide on contempt of Congress and how it doesn't comport with America's constitutional underpinnings. I'm going to release that on my Substack, which will be also here right now because I can't recall exactly what it is. So also, one last announcement before we go. If you guys want to stay up to date to everything I'm doing, please be sure to follow me on Twitter at @OfficialCWatson, and also be sure to go to my new revised website, christianjwatson.com. My friends, I love you guys so much, and please stay pensive.